How likely is it that you'll be cursed while getting a haircut? No, genuinely. This is actually a question that's being asked on TikTok right now after one woman had a really strange experience. Imagine you go to a salon that you've never been to before, and at first everything seems fine, but then you start noticing witchcraft paraphernalia dotted around. You think it's just Halloween decorations, but it's June, so it can't be. And then you realise that things might not be as they seem. One account on TikTok posted their experience with this. And today I wanted to go through this video and see what really happened in this hair salon. If you're new here, hello, my name is Hearth, I'm a practicing witch, and I love talking and teaching witchcraft. So let's dive into this hair salon spell work and see what's really going on. The original poster of the TikTok is called Rosy Girl Grace, but I initially saw this video through the channel Robert Reacts. I'll leave them both down in the description box. So let's watch the original video and see what went down at this salon, and then let's pick it apart and see what was actually being carried out by these people.
Put your finger down if you went to get a haircut last year and instead maybe you got a voodoo curse put on you. I recorded this video so many times a year ago, and I had drafts that I don't have anymore, but I never posted it because I was genuinely terrified because of the just stupid crazy shit that happened, that I was like, if I talk about it, will they come after me? I don't know, but I'm gonna talk about it now because it's been a year and I just remembered that the drafts are gone, and I want people to know, but I won't say where it is unless you guys tell me that I should. But my parents told me at the time that like they could sue me for defamation if I say what happened. So please advise me. So what happened is I've only ever had my hair cut by my mom in my kitchen, and I wanted to get a real haircut because my mom hasn't been a practicing cosmetologist in over like 2 decades. And so my friend sent me this business TikTok and was like, here's an all-inclusive place that seems really friendly and cool for a first haircut. And I was like, awesome, this place looks great. And they're very well known on TikTok and made fun of for certain thing that they do about their all-inclusiveness, okay? They cater specifically to the queer community. And I went, and it was great. Like my first appointment was great. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is really cool. This is really cool. And then I get home and I look at it because when the haircut was finished, they just had me pay and leave. I didn't really get a chance to put my fingers through it and see if it was right. And there were some things that were wrong about it. And so I messaged them and I was like, hey, can we get a touch up? And they were like, sure. And I go in and they spend the entire time being like, I actually did this right. Like you're wrong, but we'll alter it for you, which was fine, I guess. But when I went back, the normal eclectic stuff that they had before, like all the picture frames and stuff up on the wall, was still there, but they had added some Halloween decorations. And when I asked them, hey, did you decorate for Halloween 5 months early? Because it was almost like a year ago today. It was like June 10th, July 10th, I think. And they were like, no. And that's all we talked about it. But when I walked in the room, there was a giant sign that says, abandon hope, all ye who enter. And there was a ring of salt around my chair, and there was salt in front of the mirror in front of me and on the countertop in front of me. And there was a mirror behind me that had a giant pentagram covering the entirety of it. There was a pentagram on the floor in front of me, 3 pentagrams in the corner of the mirror in front of me. And next to that line of salt on the countertop was some candles and voodoo doll looking things. There's also a skeleton. I think the skeleton may have been there during the first appointment. I think that might have just been part of their decor, but it ties in, so I really don't know. But the vibe when I walked into the fix appointment was just hate. It was just hate, and I felt so uncomfortable. And then halfway through the appointment, they left to go to the bathroom. Now, in the first appointment, they left to go to the bathroom as soon as I got there, which I thought was odd that they hadn't gone already. But I don't care. You do your thing. But the second appointment was 10 minutes long. So I don't know why they had to leave halfway through, except for the fact that when they left, the music switched from being like pop music or elevator music to the kind of music you would hear in a haunted house where it's like whisper chanting in a different language. Yeah, and then it went back to normal as soon as they came back in the room. And they were cutting my hair really quickly the whole time, and so quickly they snagged the scissors on my hair for a second and like pulled my hair really hard. And then when they finished, they literally go, all right, you're done, you gotta go, I've got a client coming, and like walk me out the door and close it behind me. And I essentially immediately start bawling, and I call my friend and I'm like, what the fuck? And I call my dad and I'm like, I'm coming home. Like, I'm sorry it's taking so long, but I need to have a breakdown first. And it's weird because I didn't think that they weren't threatening me with like scissors or something like that, but they are holding scissors next to my face, and there's all this threatening stuff around and the threatening music. And I just felt very uncomfortable and unsafe the entire time that I was there for that second appointment. And I wanted to post a review somewhere about it and be like, hey, this place is not chill. But my parents told me that they could sue me for defamation, so I have not said anything about it, because if they are gonna put a voodoo hex on me or something, who's gonna stop them from doing normal crazy stuff? And I don't really believe in like hexes or anything like that, but that's not the point though. That's not the point. The point is that their intention is bad, and that scares me. So if you guys want to know where it was, or if you have any guesses on where it was, let me know.
So that's what happened during this appointment, and I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section. This, though, is a really interesting case for how witchcraft is perceived by those outside of the tradition. And it's often perceived in a way that other traditions simply aren't. So for example, if I were to go to a hair salon and I walk in and I was not expecting there to be 1,000 crosses all over the walls, there are pictures of Jesus everywhere, there are hymns and religious songs being played through the speakers, would I feel a bit out of place? Would I feel uncomfortable? Yes, probably. Would I feel unsafe? Definitely not, because I'm aware that they are not going to be carrying out anything that is particularly dangerous towards me. We just follow a tradition or a belief system that is different. But when it comes to witchcraft, people outside of the tradition often see it as primarily a dangerous thing. It is a risk to safety, it is a risk to health. There's a lot more misinformation about witchcraft, which is why to this day we are still talking about the misinformation, why we're still breaking it down, because it occurs every single day. Now, that's not me saying that this individual didn't feel unsafe, because it's very clear that they did. It's just that the reasoning for it is often steeped in misinformation. So when I looked at this video initially, I immediately thought that this doesn't seem like any kind of baneful magic at all. This actually just seems like a salon that is following the advice of somebody to protect themselves against baneful or negative magic. And when you watch the start of the video again, it does sort of make sense. We have a hair salon that is often made fun of online for their engagement with the queer community. So it would, in theory, make sense that a popular hair salon online perhaps would be the target of baneful style magic. Now I'm just going to go back so that we can have a look at the imagery that was used in this, so some pictures that were taken. So initially you've got that sign of abandon all hope. I don't think that's got anything to do with this, to be honest. I think that's just a really funny sign. I'll be honest, if I had a shop, I would probably put that on the front as well. I just think that's really entertaining. But then we get to the salt, and this is where I do think that the witchcraft starts taking place. Now, salt is a protective agent. It is used to cleanse and it is used to protect. And so I'm not concerned at all that this is being used in a baneful way. To me, this definitely seems like they are attempting to shield themselves and their clients from harm. And its placement is really, really significant here. So we have a ring of salt around the base of the client's chair. This is typically done as a way of shielding the individual sitting in that chair from external factors or external energies. You will see this in other forms of media, like in Supernatural or Hocus Pocus. It's used in a similar way, and the concept is very similar to the use of a witch's circle, which is designed to protect practitioners and their spells during spells and rituals. This is very heavily making me think that they are actually attempting to protect the client from unwanted interference. This then goes a step further, where we have a line of salt in front of a mirror. Now, mirrors are liminal space. Some people consider them to be portals. They are the in-betweens, the coming and going places, and it's where energies and spirits can very readily pass to and from. And if you've had a lot of activity in this environment, you're going to want to protect your client by putting them in a ring of salt. You're also going to want to limit the amount of energy that's going to be able to get into this space. And I actually think that this then ties in with the pentagrams that we see on the mirrors in just a moment. I think this all links together, so I will circle back to this. We then have a line of salt on the countertop. This is also going to be a boundary place. This is a location where things are being added, and especially if this countertop is in front of a mirror, it is going to be a location that could be heavily influenced. And so the use of salt on this is an extra level of protection. Now we then get onto the bit that I find really interesting, and it's what's making me think that there is either a practitioner working at this salon or they have been given the advice of a practitioner. And that is the symbols on the mirrors. We see pentacles being drawn on the floor, as well as 4 on 2 different mirrors. Now I'm going to differentiate here the use of pentagram and pentacle because they are different things. A pentagram is a 5-pointed star. A pentacle is a 5-pointed star within a circle. These symbols have been used for thousands of years among many different traditions and religions, including Christianity. There's a lot of stigma around these symbols today as representations of devil worship, of Satanism, of witchcraft and baneful magic. But in reality, for hundreds of years, it was used to represent the 5 wounds of Christ within Christianity, and you will still see it in Christian stained glass. It is only a modern misconception that it is solely associated and attributed to witchcraft. Of course, it is used in witchcraft. It's commonly used as a representation of the 5 elements in union with the whole, as well as being a representation for protection. And it's commonly used in protection style magic. A lot of practitioners, myself included, will wear them on a daily basis. They will have them tattooed on themselves for the purpose of protection. And it also is a symbol for other practitioners to recognize who's who and what's what. A little bit like Christians will wear a cross to represent their faith as well as to offer them protection. Witches and many pagans will do the same with their symbols that they choose to associate with, including the pentacle, the triple moon, we have the triskelion, we have the triquetra. These are all symbols that are now associated with witchcraft and paganism, but have in the past been associated with many other different traditions and religions. This is important though. Their placement on mirrors is significant because mirrors, as mentioned, are liminal space. Now, I have an entire video on the topic of mirror locking, and I think this is exactly what is being carried out here. So because mirrors are liminal places, they are portals, in-betweens, they allow energies and spirits to pass through really, really readily. This can be really frustrating, especially if you are finding yourself the target of an energetic or spiritual attack, whether this is just by entities wanting to enter into that space and mess with you, or whether it is by practitioners sending things towards you. They are locations that allow easy access into your environment, and so you're going to want to protect that. The downside of being in a hair salon is there are a lot of mirrors, and you and the client needs to be able to see into the majority of those mirrors, which is why I suspect that the mirror in front of you had salt in front of it and perhaps some small pentacles in the bottom corner, but the mirror behind you had a big pentacle drawn on the front. And to me, these look like they could have been drawn in some kind of ashy material. They're very messily done, they're very quickly done, and I suspect that there is a reason behind that. When we're locking a mirror, the point is to stop that mirror from being an entry and exit point. You are essentially locking the metaphorical door, much like you would your house door if you don't want anybody to walk in. It allows us to still use a mirror and still have a mirror within that space without it having the energetic in and out that unlocked mirrors tend to have. Now, if you have a mirror in your environment, you don't have to lock it. And actually, there's lots of benefit to not locking it. You can use mirrors in spells and rituals for different purposes, for sending energy to different locations, magnifying it, reflecting it back. There are so many different ways of using them. But if a mirror is making you uncomfortable, or if you are experiencing things that are really strange, then you might want to look into locking it. Locking it can be really small and really simple. It can be really big like it is here. But if anything, I think the way this is being done shows that it has been done in haste, and it has likely also been done in a bit of a panic too. We have a lot of protection going on all in one go, and I suspect it's because they've been experiencing something quite strong in this environment, and they need to be able to keep the place open. And so you lock everything that you can possibly find. You put salt everywhere. Realistically, a hair salon or any other business is not going to outwardly show defensive magic unless it is a really strong, bad situation. So when locking mirrors, we can put sigils on the back of that mirror. We can put some oil on the front of that mirror that is used for protection. You can draw sigils on the front of that mirror in water that has been infused with herbs that are designed for protection. You can use ash, so burnt petitions, burnt herbs that have been powdered down, mixed with an oil or with a liquid, so they form a bit of a paste, and then you can draw them on the mirror that way. Or you can use something like a black pen that has been charged with intention, which may well be what's been used here, to draw onto those mirrors. And you're going to want to be using a symbol of significance. So this could be a little dot on that mirror that has been charged with your intention really, really strongly. This might be a sigil that you have specifically created. So this is a symbol for magical intention that suits your desired goals. So this could be a sigil that says, this mirror is locked from unwanted energies. You reduce it all down into a single image that you then use as your sigil to draw onto those mirrors. It could be a symbol of significance, like a pentagram or a pentacle, which are commonly used as symbols of protection, of balance. And so that's probably why these symbols have been used. So you have one over the entire surface of the mirror that's behind you. This is going to be because mirrors facing one another, in some cases, will amplify themselves. So you have a portal on this side and you have a portal on this side, and you're allowing the energy between these 2 points to build up again and again and again as the energy is going backwards and forwards. And that can make this seat that's in between the two deeply, deeply uncomfortable, especially if you do have other energies going on. So I'm really curious as to whether this is the only seat that has the protection circle around it in that salt, or are all of the seats like that? Because it may well be that it is in this particular location between these two mirrors, and that's why we do have a lock on the mirror behind. The mirror in front then has 3 pentacles drawn in the bottom corner in a similar way. Now, this is probably going to be quite a big mirror. They usually are. It's a hair salon, but you need your clients to be able to look into that mirror. So you can't have something over the entire surface of it. So they've done it in the bottom corner. Now, 3 is really, really significant in witchcraft. When we're talking about numerology, all of the numbers are significant, but 3 is commonly used in witchcraft for manifestation. It is a really strong number that many people will use in their spells and rituals, myself included. And so the use of 3 here makes me think that they really wanted to drive home the point that this mirror should be locked and protected. 1 little pentacle they didn't think was going to be enough. So instead, they've gone with 3 and the line of salt to make it so that if that mirror turned out to not be locked, even after all of the time they've put into it, there's an extra level of protection with that line of salt. We then also have the pentacle drawn on the floor, which is likely for additional protection over that space. The idea that anywhere where these symbols are present is under the protection of that symbol. And to me, straight away, this seems like a location that is under a lot of spiritual pressure, a lot of stress. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's quite unusual to have a public space with a lot of witchcraft visible. You'll have lots of public spaces that employ witches and that work with witchcraft to be successful, to be protected, but they usually aren't as out and out about it. They're usually keeping it a little bit secret. It might be a little altar on a shelf. It might be things beneath the counter. It might be spell bags or poppets inside drawers. It might be jewelry that the owner is wearing. It's usually not so publicly done and usually not so hastily done, which is what's really making me think that this was done in a bit of a panic. Now, I suspect that there's likely not a practitioner that is working here, and that they may well have taken advice from another practitioner, and that's why everything is done to such an extreme extent. This amount of protection isn't necessary. Obviously, it's going to depend on what's been going on, but it seems like a case of more is more. More protection has got to be better than what we're dealing with right now. So I think that then leads into the other things we're going to be seeing when we have the items that are going to be out on the side. Now, one thing that's really important for me to point out is that while there's a massive misconception that all dolls are part of voodoo, that just isn't the case. Dolls are used in magical traditions all around the world, and they go by many different names, including puppets, fetishes, fifth faths, and the like. They are only voodoo dolls if the individual that has been carrying out the spiritual work on it is a follower of that tradition. If they aren't, then that isn't a voodoo doll. This is often a massive misconception when it comes to people outside of the witchcraft community. And I think it's because magical traditions tend to be all gathered together into one thing, when actually the magical arts is a very large umbrella that covers thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of different spiritualities, religions, belief systems, traditions, and styles of practice. We aren't all one and the same. If you talk to a modern day druid and a Wiccan, you're going to get different answers, just like if you were to talk to a Christian witch, you're going to get different ones again. Not everybody practices the same things in the same way, and not everything is carried out by everybody within the community. There are certain things that are specific to set traditions, there are certain descriptors and names that are only used within certain paths, and the voodoo doll is one of those things. Anybody outside of that tradition would be using a puppet or a fifth fath, a fetish, an effigy. There are so many different names for it, and they're not always used for negative magic either. I think this is a massive stigma too, is that people see a doll and they think cursing, when actually dolls are used as a representation for an individual. Now, this individual might be yourself, it might be somebody outside of yourself, a family member, a friend, but given that everything else so far has been used for protective style magic, I suspect that this is likely the case too. This may well either represent the person that is being targeted by all of this baneful work, or it might be the person that has done the baneful work. So they might be targeting to limit or to bind the individual that was carrying out that practice. And if they don't know who that person is, having that doll in the space where that energy is strongest is going to be the most effective way of linking it to that person if they don't have anything else, any other tag locks or representations for them. And having zoomed in on this little image, this is entirely being used for protection. There is no evil going on here. So we have a puppet in the center that could be a voodoo doll. Obviously, I don't know the origins of it, but you then have 3 candles surrounding it. On the left, you have a black candle. Black is commonly used for protection. They are designed to cleanse a space of unwanted energies and protect against unwanted energies and influence. On the far right, it looks like you have a saint candle, or a candle that represents an individual, a religious figure that is designed to offer protection. This is actually half burned, so this has obviously been going on for quite a while. And then in the center between the two is actually a candle that on the front of it says the words protection. This is a fire-based spell by the looks of it, by the color of that candle, by the artwork that is on the exterior of it, and it says protection at the very bottom. I can't see what the top 3 words say, but at the bottom it says protection, and this is going to be designed to burn away unwanted energies and influence, unwanted spells and rituals. And I can tell by the different depths in the candles that this has likely been going on for a while. That black candle is a new candle. So either they've already gone through one of those candles, or they've just added a candle to this working that already had 2 candles. They are going through these candles, and they're likely being lit for the duration of time that they're actually in the building. So they may well be replenishing these candles as the day is going on, because while they have clients in the building, they want to make sure that they're staying safe. And then not really mentioned at the front of that doll, you actually have 3 candles, which again is about manifestation. These are just tea light candles. They are behind the wall of salt, like the line of salt that's in place. So it looks like this is designed to be protecting and limiting restricting the amount of energy that's then going to be able to pass through that line of salt. And the use of 3 again is really significant. It is about manifestation, and it's usually amplification of the energies that's already going on here. So we have the doll in the middle, we have a protection candle on the left, a protection candle that's likely been charged and dressed with oils and herbs in the middle, and then we have another candle that's likely for protection. It looks like a saint candle. I'm not super well versed on my saints though, so if anybody can zoom in and see what this is, I would really, really appreciate that so we can have more information here. But this to me seems very much like it is just being done for protection. And it seems like this is a really strong situation that's going on here. And then we get onto the chanting. Now, this is the one that I find the most unusual out of everything. And there is a little clip in here that I will play again so that we can all kind of listen to it. So I've listened to this over and over and over again, right? And I am not hearing a different language. I'm not hearing the whisper chanting, though obviously this will be a recording that was done in the vicinity, and so it's not going to be the highest quality. What I will say here is that witchcraft is not commonly carried out in another language. There's a lot of stereotyping that witchcraft is carried out in Latin, and it involves the chanting of things backwards and all of this kind of stuff. But for the most part, practitioners want to understand what they're saying. And if they don't understand what they're saying, well, then there's not really that much point in saying it. There are, however, practitioners who enjoy working in Latin because they enjoy the process of translating things, of trying to get it right, and they find it has a magical edge that essentially sets the stage for their spells and rituals. Now, I want to emphasise here that I'm not saying that all of witchcraft is carried out in English, not at all. Instead, it is usually carried out in a language that the practitioner themselves speaks and or understands. Something where they can fully grasp exactly what it is that they're saying, and they're not going to fumble over their words as they're doing their spells and rituals, because there's nothing more annoying than forgetting the Latin that you're trying to speak partway through a spell when you've left a piece of paper with the Latin on it outside of the circle that you've just cast. Been there, done that. So I can't tell whether this is simply that the connection to the Bluetooth speaker was lost, whether the connection to the radio station was lost. I mean, it happens. It almost sounds like that in between radio stations. But also, this might actually not be something that they've even intended to happen. This could be something that they have been given by another practitioner to put on when they aren't in the room to essentially protect further against that unwanted energy. That's a theory. Alternatively, if they have been experiencing really, really weird phenomena, you might find that this is something that they've been experiencing when they've been there by themselves, that they leave the room and all of a sudden the radio station they were tuned into suddenly tunes out again. And you're getting this weird white noise that's a garbled mass of multiple different stations. And then as soon as they walk back in again, it clicks back in again. This is something people experience a lot with strange and haunted locations, is that electronics tend to go wrong. And this might be something that they were experiencing. I'm not saying it definitely is, but it's a possibility. Alternatively, of course, as mentioned, this could have been something that they have been told to put on. A little bit like a sigil. If you have words that are no longer audible or understandable but still hold meaning, they can be really powerful to use within witchcraft because they still hold the significance, but you aren't focusing on the meaning of all of the individual words. Instead, you're focusing on the general energy of it. But it is quite unusual to be putting this on when clients are in the room, which is then making me swing the other way and think that this is more likely to be something that is out of their control. It would then explain why they felt so uncomfortable when they came back into that space, finished the haircut really quickly, and then asked you to leave. I don't think this really has anything to do with the client in question here, the lady who initially posted this TikTok. I actually think it has everything to do with how unsafe the individuals feel in their own hair salon. Strange things are happening, and it seems as though the protections that they are carrying out aren't necessarily being as effective as they want them to be. And the less time that they have clients in the salon, the less likely it is for them to become the target of this as well. And so you get them in, you get the haircut, you get them gone as quickly as possible, which would also explain all of the paraphernalia that's been left lying around, which would normally, if this was a long-term thing, be kept tucked away and hidden somewhere safe and out of sight to do its work without being disturbed. Though this is just generally a really interesting case for how witchcraft is perceived by people outside of it. As a practitioner looking at this seems to me like a hair salon that is really struggling with something. Whether this is a haunting, whether this is unwanted energy, whether this is spell work that is being aimed towards them. To me, there is nothing evil about what they're doing here. If anything, they are attempting to protect themselves against something that they are perceiving as being evil or a risk to them. That these individuals are not performing any curses, they are not doing anything malicious, they are not evil. And if anything, I would say that if you felt an evil presence entering into that building the second time around, that's more likely going to be what they are protecting themselves against and hoping to protect their clients against with that ring of salt around the chairs than something that they themselves are carrying out. It seems very much as though they are attempting to do what they can to resolve this situation. Now, I don't want this to be a negative on the original poster of this TikTok either, not at all. Misconceptions are often social. They are based off the environment that we have been brought up in, the religions that we have been brought up in, the community as a whole, and misconceptions are incredibly difficult to shake. It is something that takes patience and time and practice to be breaking down these misconceptions and to be unlearning the things that we've been taught. And so I have absolutely no negativity to the original poster of this, because if you don't know about witchcraft, you're not going to realize what's going on here. Now, for the hair salon in question, this obviously took place a year ago now. It may well no longer be an issue, but if you are ever in this situation, anybody, it is generally a good idea to start with cleansing. Start by figuring out if you've added anything new into that space that might be bringing in this energy. Start by going back and looking at any encounters that you might have had, any engagement with an individual that perhaps could have led to these things. That's not to say initially blame a single person. That's just be mindful. Think back of the encounters that you've had. Has anything happened? Has anybody said anything? Has anybody made a threat? This, that, and the other? Have you experienced anything strange starting from a specific point in time? And then we can start working on resolving it. So I think locking the mirrors is a really good idea. So you're stopping anything from being able to enter that space through liminal space like mirrors. The same needs to be done though on doors. But before we do that, we need to be cleansing that space. Cleanse, then protect. Otherwise, everything that is in that environment is now trapped by the protections in that environment. So you cleanse the space, then you protect that space so that you can make sure that everything that was in is now out, and then you put your protections up. The protections ideally need to be on all liminal space, so not just mirrors, this also needs to be doors and windows. And ideally, I would go for something a little bit more subtle, so you can get protection oils in little bottles, you charge them thinking of your particular intention, which would be to protect the hair salon, you shake it up, you put a little bit on your finger, and then you might want to draw a pentacle on the bottom corner of your windows and allow the oil to dry. You can also do this with water that has been infused with protective herbs. You do the same, you charge it with your intention, you put a little bit on your finger, you draw a protection symbol on the bottom of that window or the very top or wherever you fancy, and then you allow it to dry down. You're going to want to be replenishing this every couple of weeks, every month. Do it on all of the liminal spaces, doors, windows, chimneys, mirrors. You don't necessarily have to put things on the front of a mirror. If a mirror is obviously attached to the wall, like it's screwed into the wall, that's different. But if it's a mirror that's hung on a wall, you can cut out a piece of paper, write a protection sigil on that piece of paper, or draw a pentacle. You can do this in ash from incense as well, if that's something that you want to do. You then stick it to the back of that mirror, put the mirror back on the wall again. That mirror is now locked. I do have an entire video on this. I will link it down in the description box. As for protecting staff members, I'd recommend that they wear protective jewellery, something that was going to be able to offer them protection for when they leave and return. Because you can have protections up on a building, but if you do not have protections on yourself and something latches onto you, they can basically piggyback off you to get into that environment and then be in that space again. If you are noticing that even with the protection candles, the cleansing, the locking of mirrors, nothing has been resolved, you then need to take it up a level. And this is where, if you do not have somebody that is experienced that works for you, you're going to need to go to somebody reliable. Please do not just go to the first person that you find. Find somebody that is trusted to do some kind of banishing. You can find banishings online that will suit your religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, what it is that you need. And the idea behind this is that you are then taking it a step further. So you cleanse, then you banish, then you cleanse, then you protect, as a way of making sure all of that energy is gone. So you cleanse the space to raise up all of that energy and to disrupt it. Think of energy a little bit like dust, right? It starts settling on things. And as more gets added to that space, it settles on more and more things. When we cleanse, we shake it all up so it's easier to get rid of. So you shake it all up with a cleanse. You then do a banish. Now, a banishment is where you forcibly push energy away from the site of the banishment. So you aren't going to be getting rid of that energy forever, but you are forcing it out in a stronger way than a cleanse would. So you cleanse, shake up that energy. You banish, which pushes all of that energy through open windows and doors out of that hair salon. You cleanse again. This is to make sure that all of that energy is disrupted and what you've just banished cannot immediately come back in again. You then raise your protections. So you protection jewelry, protection symbols, protection wards, locking of mirrors. You then make sure that everything in that environment is protected, and you make sure that you protect your staff too, so that nothing comes and goes. You might want to be having some kind of protection along the entryway door, so that as clients are coming and going, nothing is being able to pass through that door. So I would recommend something like black tourmaline, which is a crystal, placed along the top of a door frame. You might want to be using witches' bells. You might want to be using a witch's ball. Obviously, it's going to depend on the tradition. I'm a traditional English witch, and so the items that I'm using are predominantly found here, but witches' bells are really, really useful for this. They're also just really cute decoration, and they let you know when people have come and gone through the front door, so it could be shown as being just another item that's used to tell you when somebody has entered into the shop. You can also have salt across the top of a door frame, so that it's not like visible, because it needs to be an unbroken line of salt. So as soon as it gets broken, you're then going to need to fix it again. So having it along the top of a door frame is a much better way of doing it. And I really just want to put it out there that this does not seem like the hair salon has negative intentions at all. They aren't evil. It seems very much like they are just trying to protect themselves, their space, and their clients as much as they can. And it just unfortunately has a tendency to look really bad if you aren't aware of why they're doing things or what it all might mean. So hopefully the original poster is able to find a hair salon that they feel really comfortable and really safe in. And I really hope that the hair salon in question has sorted out whatever it is that they were dealing with. But I hope that you did find this enjoyable. I hope that it was a little bit insightful, perhaps, maybe even just a smidge entertaining. We'll see. I would love it though if you ever see any videos like this on TikTok or on Instagram or wherever it is. If you want to send them my way, I can take a look and see what's going on. I really enjoy getting to look at other people's style of practice and figuring out what they're doing and why, and especially if it is something that is perhaps being taken the wrong way. And witchcraft does still have a lot of misconceptions, so I'd love to break some of them down. Of course, I'm not the be-all end-all of information. This is all just my personal experience, but I really enjoyed this one. I hope that you did too. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give it a like. I would love to hear your opinions on this. Let me know down in the comment section. Do you agree? Do you have more to add? I would love to know. And with that being said, if you enjoy this content, feel free to subscribe. It's totally free, and I post witchcraft content every single week. And I hope that you're staying safe. I hope you have a marvelous, magical day, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye!